So I really invite you all to be participants, observers, wide open, your whole mind, your whole body, your whole being, because this is an opportunity that doesn't come along every Sunday. Jacky, Laurie, Justine, enjoy.
Thank you very much for that. Welcome this morning. We're excited to be here. We did not coordinate our clothing. Maybe through the ethers we did. But there's a lot of energy in here already this morning. And we're talking today about me and my shadow. And we'll see how we can do with the electronics here. Thank you, Gary. So life is an experiential. You have to help me with that, Jerry. Gary knows we have trouble with electronics here. We can blame it on Mercury retrograde also today. So life is experiential. And so today we want to talk about what shadow energy is, what it means to us as an opportunity to expand and grow. And actually, we're going to do a practice. Julie's going to lead us through a tapping exercise later on. And you don't have to know about tapping. She's an awesome teacher. I did tapping with her yesterday, and I said she made me cry. But that's a good thing. So it's about release. And we're in this time where we want to release some of our shadow energy. So today, life is about experiential. So life is experiential, and so that's why we are going to experience a tapping session today. And we know that through our experiences, we create change. Without experiences, we remain status quo, right? So when we have these experiences and we bump into other frequencies, so sometimes these experiences aren't very comfortable, it's purposefully to get us to change and to grow. So right now, what we're experiencing, you guys can jump in. What we're experiencing is as we bump into others' energies, we're getting triggered. How many of you are getting triggered? You might have an emotion that just bubbles to the top, and you're like, where did that come from? I thought I dealt with that years ago. So we're being triggered. And when we're triggered, we also are mirroring. And many of us are familiar with that term of mirroring. That simply means people are coming into our lives that are showing us mirror image of ourselves. So if we're being triggered by something, it's to have us see, oh, I don't like that about this situation or that person, but really turn it to you and say, what is it that I don't like about me? Or what is it that I don't like about how I am in this situation? And that's where the brain comes in and starts really doing crazy things with us, right, Justine?
Right. Absolutely. And one of the things that I love about what we're talking about today is that we're addressing a deeper level of this information that's flowing through. A lot of the work that we do when we're looking at how the brain functions is really understanding that positive thinking alone isn't enough. You know, sometimes if you want to feel differently, you just have to change the way you think, and that can often work for people. Just redirect your thoughts. Sometimes if you want to feel differently or you're feeling really negative, you can look at the stress response. So once again, you're looking at the neurological system. Maybe I'm just really busy at work. Maybe I'm not eating properly. Maybe I haven't slept for a few days. But if all of your stress is really kind of managed in your life and you're monitoring your thoughts, but there's still something deeper coming up, that's when we start to look at the soul or the level of the spirit or this information in your amazing system. That's not just the way you're thinking. It's not just stress in your life. There's deeper information and deeper conversations that are coming out. And it's an invitation really to address it. But the choice is, do we then sit there and look at it?
So as we go to this next level of deepness that Justine is talking about, as vibrational beings, we need tools and practices and mechanisms to go to that depth. Because we can admit, I don't know how to do this. This is coming up again, and I don't know how to do this. And so tapping is one way. We're going to talk about some other practices later on. But tapping, I know in your practice, and even what I experienced yesterday, it was just childhood stuff. I'm like, where did that come from? And so it's buried deep within our body, within our DNA, right?
It is very deep, and when we have something going on in our lives right now, there's usually a pattern. This has been happening in our lives for a while. And when I work with people in EFT, we're going back to the earliest memory possible because that's where the pattern started. And until you address the pattern in your life, it comes up in your relationships with your significant others, with your family. It just comes up in your face. And until you address that and deal with that, you're going to keep experiencing it over and over. And you know this, you've heard this before. So tapping is a tool that helps clear that pattern out and knock it out so it will go away.
And we really can't release it, Julie, right, until we fully understand it, right?
We have to understand it. We have to feel it. We have to acknowledge it. And those are things that we don't like to do. We want to put on our happy mask and pretend that everything is okay. And if I'm positive enough, I'll go away and everything will be fine. And as we talk about shadow today, shadow is what we need to deal with and we need to acknowledge so we can get to that better place.
Okay. So next. So many of you might be asking, what's wrong with me? Absolutely nothing. Nothing. And that's why it's in capital letters and it's underlined, is there is nothing wrong with you. In fact, you're in the perfect place right now to be doing this work. Planetary-wise, age-wise, where you live, who you're with, you are in the perfect spot right now to address this. So shadow at an individual level, we're working with, but we're also working through shadow energy at a collective level. So let's talk about that for just a minute.
I love this idea of evolution. If you hang out with all the work that we look at, we're always really taking stock of the fact that this is an evolutionary process. There's no end to that process. It's a journey. And what I love with this concept here is that idea of the phoenix rising, that everything has to crumble in the old way for a new and better version to arrive. And as we move into these states of being conscious creators of our life, of not just living from worst case scenario predictions of the future based on the fears of the past, as we move into our conscious evolution and make those choices for ourselves, a lot of the time, initially when we begin that process, we become shocked because we think, well, if I'm going through a healing, I should feel better, right? Like things should look better, should feel better, things should improve. But when you truly understand evolution at the individual level and the collective level, everything that is extraordinary has changed form so dramatically that there was a dying off of a self. Has anyone experienced a sort of dying of the self? Yeah. Mm-hmm. And it's happening in our paradigms across the globe, the medical paradigms, the economic paradigms, the social paradigms, the religious paradigms. Everything is going through that sort of phoenix-like death. And if you understand that, you can let go of some of that fear. You can use tapping to start to release some of that fear of overwhelm. And you can actually begin to get excited about the next rebirth, what's coming next. And trust that process.
That Phoenix rising, we're actually under the influence of Pluto yet. And Pluto will be in its stations till 2023. That's a long time that we're going through major death and rebirth. But the beauty about death and rebirth is we're preparing for something greater. And as long as we look at working with our shadow energy as something that we really can use as an opportunity to clear, it's not a negative thing. Sometimes I have clients that say, I'm working in my shadow, and they look at it as a negative thing. And I say, congratulations. Because where there is light, there's also always the opposite, the shadow energy, right, Julie?
There is. This happens to us all the time. When you have something going on in your life, you're excited about it, something positive and excited. You always have this little feeling, a but, or that might not be true. That's the shadow lurking. And to look at that shadow lurking, Justine mentioned overwhelm. Has anybody felt overwhelmed before? Anyone? we'll actually be tapping a little bit on overwhelm later. But there's always that little shadow that's lurking there in everything that you do. And calling attention to it and addressing it isn't going to make it manifest. It's going to help it release so you can get where you want to be.
So as light beings, and we're all energy and we're light, it's simply bringing that shadow energy into your light. It's all you're doing. And it's triggering, or it's coming to the surface because it wants attention. It's that inner energy, and it wants to be recognized and acknowledged. And once you do that, then you understand it more. And then, as Julie said, you can feel it, you acknowledge it, it can be released, but it needs to be acknowledged in that.
Absolutely. I think one of the downfalls or the pitfalls of, the spiritual path, or this idea that people really begin to choose their own awakening, is that we think the shadow is bad, so we label it as something bad because the brain is labeling it with fear, or we're judging it from the past. And if you can fall in love with it, know that it's a part of you, that it served a purpose earlier in your life, possibly to keep you safe. One of my favorite statements that I often use in my tapping and things like that is, I did the best that I could at the time. I did the best that I could at the level of consciousness that I had at the time. I'll often use that statement as well if the shadow's being reflected to me. So if I see other people that I'm judging as doing something, and there's a lot of blame or a lot of judgment, and I'm irritated at them for the way they're making me feel. I want them to stop doing that. And I do this work and take it inwards, and I'm like, you know what? They're doing their best at their level of evolution. They're doing their best with the level of consciousness that they have. And if we can come back to that forgiveness, understand that we individually have shadows, and collectively this extraordinary community on the planet and the earth herself is going through an evolution of the shadows, I find that helps.
It's very natural in this state of evolution. In fact, it's necessary in this state of evolution. And you touched on a really good point, Justine, that if we don't acknowledge those pieces of shadow energy, we're not acknowledging a piece of us. So we like to talk about the light in us, but we have to talk about all of us, and that's the key. So let's talk about some of the things that we might experience with shadow. So I'll take the first one. So desire to fight, flee, or hide. How many of you have experienced that one? Something comes up and we want to run. That's that primal brain that wants to run, hide, or we want to stand and fight. And the new energies right now are to, I call it stand in the fire. Stand and be in that energy, acknowledge it, honor it, then you can move forward on it.
Yeah, if I could add, from the point of view of the way we look at the brain and we want to use the brain, if you haven't looked at your brain recently, we are discovering things about the brain just in the last 20 to 30 years. So there's a huge amount of information coming out about the way our brains function, and I guarantee every single one of you has a brain. The question is, are you using it? So if we're always remembering that we are a consciousness using a brain and a body as a vehicle to experience life, and the stress response is mediated through a primitive biological system in the center of your brain and at the back, so in the middle of the brain and the hindbrain at the back. Now, we actually have an extraordinary part of our brain at the front. So if everyone could take your hand, please, and place it on your forehead. Beautiful. You might even want to close your eyes. Feel into the area behind your forehead, because where you place your attention is where you place your energy. That is your frontal lobe. This is the seat of human evolution right here, just behind your forehead. Thank you. You can take your hands down now. You just brought energy and awareness and intention. You just turned the lights on in the evolved part of your brain. The more you use that part of the brain, the more you interrupt those stress responses. And so when you notice yourself with a desire to flee or fight or hide, You can say, wow, I'm just turning into a lizard. I'm a primitive being at the moment. Let me evolve by choice. Let me be conscious. And the way to turn the lights on there's 2 ways. One is meditation, and the other is aerobic exercise. They find increases your executive function right there. So dive into those practices if you're interested in sort of evolving there beyond fear.
That moving.
So if you look at this slide and look at all of the things that are listed there, the judgmental, the triggered by small incidental things, the internal conflict, and go down that list, everything that's listed there happens when you're in fight, flight, or freeze mode. That's how you know you're in fight, flight, or freeze mode. That's how you know. So if you're wondering, how do I know when I'm fight, flight, or freeze mode? If you're behaving in one of these manners, you're in it. And Justine mentioned a couple of ways to get out of it. And the third way that I use is tapping. Because literally you're tapping on meridian endpoints in your body. And it's reducing the cortisol in your body, which is the stress hormone, and you've all heard that. And when that reduces, that takes you out of that lizard brain and brings you up into this part of your brain that you all just moved energy into. And that does that for you. And so these are all things you've probably all experienced. I know I have. And this is great awareness to see this slide and to see all those things on there. Because now that you're calling attention to it, maybe you don't like those things when you behave that way. But now that you're saying, okay, yes, I do these things, now you have awareness around it. And when it happens next, then you now have some new tools or some new thoughts so you can start to change your behaviors and get yourself out of that lizard brain into the frontal cortex.
So that's part of evolution. And how many of you were uncomfortable with any of these statements here? I think we all can relate to all of them, or the majority of them.
Yeah, I just really want to honor what Julie said. I have studied meditation for a long time. And there's often you can't meditate your way out of some experiences of stress. And when I learnt tapping, it was one of the most powerful tools I'd ever come across. It's absolutely extraordinary. And one of the things that I love that you've mentioned and highlighted here is stress and emotions, and the experience of emotions with the shadows. So some people think that stress or fear is just sort of this thing unto itself, but your negative emotions are a side effect of stress, and your negative emotions can also instigate the stress response. So it's kind of the chicken or the egg experience. Mm-hmm. But the emotions are really that key linking factor. And the other word for tapping is emotional freedom technique. It's known as EFT. So if you can free yourself from those experiences, what I love about this tool is that, from my understanding of tapping, it really helps you to acknowledge the negative emotion you're feeling at that time. So we're not pushing it away. You're asking yourself to stay in the body. You're asking yourself to fully acknowledge it. And just, it's okay to feel that way. It's okay to feel negative emotions. But what do we do with them?
We carry so much in our body, and as I look at light and I look at your etheric body and your emotional body and your spiritual body and those layers around you, it's the physical body that holds on to those memories or holds on to the energy. And that's why movement, meditation, yoga, walking, tapping, all those things are needed for the physical part of our energetic body. But we still have our emotional, spiritual, and etheric bodies that also get adjusted. When the body is happy, those things tend to align naturally. Mm-hmm. Okay? So what happens when we suppress and resist?
Well, Justine was just leading us right perfectly into this slide. When we do suppress, and I kind of alluded to this earlier too, like when we do suppress, that's when all of these things start to come out. All these things that were on the previous slide, all of those come out because we keep suppressing it, but it gets worse. Have any of you ever been angry in here? I take that as a yes. When you're angry at somebody and you pretend not to be angry at them, how does that work for you? Does it work really well? Does your anger really go away? It doesn't. What happens, stay with me, what happens is you actually get mad at everything they do and say and think it's all against you. Because you're like pushing this down, you're suppressing this, you're trying to resist it. And you've all heard this before, what resists persists. So here you are working so hard to pretend you're not angry for whatever reason, and it's not helping you. It's not resolving the problem, it's not helping your relationship, it's not helping. And so when you resist, look at the slide, all these things happen. You get blocked somewhere, you get stuck, you can't move forward, you feel confused, you're at a crossroads, you're uncomfortable. And that's when we need to make some different choices.
You start breaking through the other layers that I mentioned, also your emotional, spiritual, so your body might start breaking down. You experience the illnesses that we talk about here. But then emotionally and spiritually, you start questioning things in your life that maybe have been stable for a long time. And there's two things that can happen. That's an indication that's a pattern or a belief that needs to fall away. But at least you're at that decision point, or it's a pattern or a belief that gets to stay, right? But it's acknowledging it.
Yeah, I've got a really interesting story I'd like to share, a personal experience that's happening as a shadow rears its head at the moment in my life, if that's okay. So I, as Linda mentioned, I'm trained as a veterinary surgeon. I originally trained in Sydney, Australia. But just before I went into university, my mother was diagnosed with cancer. Just before my first set of exams, she went into hospital from a terrible experience of almost dying from blood loss in our house. And over the next 3 years, she continued to go through the cancer experience and passed away. We nursed her at home, had a lot of sort of traumatic experiences for 3 years. And I didn't take any time off from university. I continued to study. But by the time I graduated, I was in a pretty severe traumatic state. I was constantly stressed. I had huge levels of grief. I started to take drugs to try to feel happy at some point during the weekend and then would crash during the weekend. A lot of you are sort of nodding with this experience of these traumatic experiences that we've had. So a lot of this was wired into me while I was studying. So if you look at the way I experienced my life, I was studying all this content in veterinary science while I was going through these emotional traumas. So by the time I graduated, I had the same degree that everybody else in my course had. And yet I would show up to work as a vet and I would be in trauma. It was terrifying. I was terrified. And I tried it out for about 1.5 years, almost 2 years, as working as a small animal vet in England. And in the end, things just kept breaking down. I had surgeries that would kind of collapse and it was getting worse and worse and I was feeling bad. So I decided to quit. I stopped working as a vet, started working with humans, which are far less fuzzy and don't talk and talk a lot more. And I never went back. I thought maybe I could try a little bit of volunteer work in India, working with rescued animals there, but I still found it traumatic and I just wasn't very good at it, you know. So I left it. And about 3 weeks ago, I decided to volunteer for Second Hand Hounds, which is a rescue agency here. And because I can't stop thinking, I'm like, you know, I have these skills, I'd love to be of service, and I love animals. So about a week after I called them, I began to have nightmares. I had nightmares about the surgeries, I had nightmares about the drugs I used to take, and then trying to serve clients in the clinic on the Tuesday when my brain was frazzled from some nightclub on the weekend. I had memories come up of my mother because of the concepts that I was looking at. I was thinking, I'm going to go into Second-Hand Hounds and they're going to think I'm a vet and they're going to ask me to start desexing animals, and I started freaking out, you know. And it was so interesting, and I remember thinking about 2 weeks ago, I think I even said it to my fiancé, I don't think I'm going to do it. I don't think I'm going to volunteer. I'm not going to go into the shadow, you know. But because we do this work and I recognised it, sat down, did a bunch of tapping, said maybe I can just serve in whatever way I can. And that part of me that wants to be back in service and to love animals and to be using my skills, I've got some fear to move through, Does that make sense for you guys? But it wasn't until my environment and I chose to move in the direction of the shadow, it started to show back to me all the fears, and then again we have the choice. Do I run away from it because it feels uncomfortable, because it's bringing back memories, which are they real things, or are they just information to invite me to heal a deeper level of myself? So it's exhausting, but I'm excited. And my house will be filled with small animals soon, I'm sure. Right, honey?
I'm under strict instructions not to bring anything home.
Thank you for sharing that. That's a perfect example of where your authentic self is coming out. Your soul knows. I've said this before. It's that I am energy, that authentic self, your soul knows. And you can't hide it forever. It comes out. And that's the beauty of where we are right now. And we have some help from the planets and the angelic beings and even the ETs that are coming in to help us to do this work. But we can't hide from it. So... So what to do? We talked about a few of these. Sorry. Why now? Those eyes working back here today. There's more light coming into us right now, and that's through all the solar flares that we're getting, the light that's coming into the planet. I mean, even look at here in Minnesota. Doesn't spring just feel incredibly early and beautiful, and we're moving? I mean, we had a light winter, but we have more light coming into us. There's more light workers and healers and those that are stepping to the plate to do the work that are coming present to illuminate and to help in this light. That's part of the beauty of where we are in this evolution. The earth itself is at a higher frequency. We've talked a lot about the 528 hertz, and it's going to continue to rise and change. And we're part of that. That's that collective energy that we're being called to raise the frequency.
And there's a reason everyone's in this room. There's a reason you're being called. There's a reason you're here listening to this. And the reason you're here is because you have some shadow work to do, so you can serve others and help them. And so, why now? How much longer do you want to wait? How much longer do you want to put that off? How much longer do you want to feel this resistance and this repressing? And how much longer? Why now? Why not now?
And as the bottom says, you're ready. I think all of you are ready. That's why you're here today, is you are hungry for information, the tools. You're ready for this.
Mm-hmm.
So now we can talk about what to do, because I know we're all doers. My brain kicks in, we need to do. So Julie, you talked about feel.
Mm-hmm.
Feeling.
Feeling is important. When Justine was sharing her story, did you stop for a moment and maybe think about your story? As she's connecting with you from a heart-centered, vulnerable space and sharing something that's live, coming up. And so it makes us stop and think about our stories and the work that we need to do. And so you're starting to feel, and you're starting to feel connected to her and connected to yourself. Feeling is good. A lot of us get hung up on just the good feelings. But the yucky feelings are giving you messages. They're giving you messages all the time. And when you don't pay attention to the small yucky feelings, they get louder and louder and louder. That's what happens. And so your body is so wise, so incredibly wise, and it's communicating with you all the time. So pay attention to those feelings that you're having, because they're a message for you.
So in identifying those feelings, that's tough for many of us.
Mm-hmm.
We've numbed or we've run away for a long time, but it's identifying and the importance in the brain, and for me it's the brain and connecting with the heart, is being able to logically think about what I'm feeling and then identify it, actually feel it, and bring it into my heart, bring it into my body and feel it.
Absolutely. Everyone knows that the goal is to live from the heart, but if you can't master the mind, you can't make the decision to drop your awareness into the heart. So we have notice there. You've got to be able to notice. You have to be able to step into that state of being the observer rather than being in the program. So you're either feeling emotions or you're noticing and observing the emotions in a state of power to then make a decision about, do I stay with these? Do I use a tool to be able to process them? Do I do some journaling to kind of find out if there's more information that wants to come through that I can then take into another session of tapping or meditation or something, But that noticing is stepping out of the actual experience and being able to identify it. It's really beautiful.
Mm-hmm. And then take healthy action. And in taking healthy action, some of the tools and practices, and again, we've covered some of those, sound and vibration. So listening to drums, Tibetan bowls, music, those things that bring sound in but have a vibrational purpose or vibrational tendency to it is really important. We've talked about tapping, meditation, movement, talking and writing. I like to talk because our voice has a vibrational frequency, and it's about acknowledging what's coming up for us, and that's a brain activity too. It's like when we talk, we get the vibrational principle of it, but our brain is also kicking in, and our heart is kicking in. So,
and it's also connecting. Don't try to do this alone. That was the last one on the other page. The stress response, the primitive biological response that goes off with the fear of emotion and the fear of the shadow, is isolating. It tells you that you're a gazelle in the middle of a field alone and you've got to get yourself to safety. It's primitive. Reach out, seek support, talk about things, but also watch your conversation, because if you're talking about the same thing for 3 years, you might want to change the topic, or use one of these tools. But connecting and talking and using those and reaching out to that community is so important.
And that community is so important. So we're living an experiential life, so we are going to do tapping this morning, and Julie's going to lead us through that.
Mm-hmm.
So,
can you just please raise your hand and let me know if you've tapped before? Just want to get an idea. And does anybody not know the tapping points? Okay, perfect. I'm going to go over them quickly. I'm not going to explain EFT. I'm hoping that this morning that you'll trust me and allow yourself to trust this process and experience it. I'm first going to show you the tapping points so we all know where we're tapping. And after I show you the tapping points, I'm going to take you through an experience, and I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to kind of take you to a yucky place for a moment. And I'm doing that intentionally because I want you to feel the power of tapping and releasing it. Because you're going to be thinking some of those thoughts anyways later tonight, and I'm just going to get them out of your head now. So we're going to tap on overwhelm, okay? The first thing I'm going to show you is the tapping points, so please follow along with me. Tap on the top of your head, and you're tapping towards the back of your head versus the front. The next point is on the inside of your eye. The inside of your eye where the bridge of your nose and your eye bone come together, okay? The next point is on the outside of your eye. The next point is under your eye, and you're literally tapping on that bone there. You want to feel that bone. If you're tapping down on your cheek, you missed the point. Those are my tapping jokes. There's more to come. If you tap then under your nose, and then your chin where you have that crease. You're tapping the crease of your chin. And you can tap with your right hand or your left hand. You can, whichever one's most comfortable for you. It doesn't matter which one you tap with. And you're tapping so you can feel the points, the pressure of your fingertips. You do not need to beat on yourself. That will not help you feel better. It will actually hurt you. So you're just tapping so you can feel it. The next point is the collarbone. And I want you to use all 4 fingers here because there's a point in it. And when you are using all 4 fingers, you'll for sure hit it. The next point is under your arm. For ladies, it's where your bra band would be. For men, it's where the ladies' bra band would be. And you're just tapping there, okay? Those are the points we're going to use today. There's lots of other tapping points. You may have seen videos with karate chop points. We are not using those today. So those are the points. Now, does anybody here have a job that you're going back to tomorrow? Or a business, you work from home, something you're going to do tomorrow? Really, raise your hand if you do. Okay, just want to get an idea. There's thoughts in your head, maybe, about tomorrow. About having to do whatever tomorrow. Whatever is on your list that you're doing tomorrow. Do you have any thoughts in your head? It goes like this, right? Oh, I'm so excited for tomorrow. It's going to be a great day. Yes. No, it doesn't. It's, oh my gosh, I have a long to-do list. I'm starting to feel overwhelmed. Sunday night is coming. That means I have to go to bed, get ready for the week, and get up early tomorrow and go do all these things that I have to do, right? And so that doesn't necessarily feel good, and you begin to feel overwhelmed. Is that true? Okay. So while you're tapping, I want you to trust your body's wisdom, because I'm going to have you take a deep breath in a moment, and I'm going to have you measure your overwhelm. And I'm going to ask you to measure it on a scale of 0 to 10. 0, you don't feel any overwhelm at all, and 10, you're completely overwhelmed. And your body is going to give you a number. A number is going to pop up in your head. And some of you are going to think, oh, I made that up. And some of you are going to, I don't know at all. Just trust your body wisdom for the moment, and whatever pops up in your head is the right answer for you. Okay? So everybody put your feet on the floor. Take a deep breath in. And I want you to feel that overwhelm in your body as you're thinking about all the things you have to do tomorrow. And I want you to measure it on a scale of 0 to 10. 0, you're not overwhelmed at all. 10, you're completely overwhelmed. And when you come up with that number, would you please open your eyes and look at me? Okay, so everybody have that number in your head. We are going to start tapping, and I'll have you all follow along with me. We're going to start at the top of the head. I'm going to say some words. You'll all repeat after me together as a group. Okay? Top of your head. I'm feeling overwhelmed. Inside eye. Just thinking about my day tomorrow. Outside eye. I'm feeling overwhelmed. Under eye. There's so much to do. Under nose, there's so much on my to-do list. Chin, I'm overwhelmed just thinking about it. Collarbone, I'm overwhelmed thinking about everything I need to do. I have a lot to do tomorrow. Top of head, I have a lot to do all week. Inside eye, I don't know how I'm going to get it all done. Outside eye, I'm feeling overwhelmed. I'm going to have everybody stop here and take another deep breath in. And I want you to check back in with your body on what you're feeling now with overwhelm. On a scale of 0 to 10, remeasure it. 0 is I'm not overwhelmed at all, and 10 is I'm completely overwhelmed. Now I do notice there's some of you that are starting to yawn. I know you're not bored because I'm funny, but what's happening is you're starting to clear some energy. Just energy starting to shift. Has anybody's number gone down a little bit? So you're starting to feel the shift in the experience of EFT. EFT is reducing the cortisol in your body and those thoughts of overwhelm. So you're acknowledging the shadow. You're acknowledging your shadow, all those thoughts that you're having in your head. You're now acknowledging them, you're calling to them, you're bringing them forward, you're using a tool to tap on them and release that. And so we go and do another round, and we'll tap some more. Okay? I want to just have a couple people shout out some stuff that popped in their head. What are you feeling overwhelmed about tomorrow? And I'll incorporate that in. Training. You have training to do tomorrow? Okay. Deadlines. Okay. Kids. Okay. I'm sorry? Time management. Okay. Client crises. All right. We're going to tap on those. So top ahead. I'm feeling overwhelmed. Inside, I have all these deadlines. Outside, I have these deadlines. Under eye, I have my kids to deal with. Under nose, I have my kids to deal with. Chin, I'm not sure how I'm going to handle it all. Collarbone, I don't know if I have enough time. Underarm, I don't have enough time. Top ahead, I'm trying to manage my time. Inside eye, but there's so much to do. Outside eye, I can't possibly get it all done. Under eye, and dealing with my client's crisis. Under nose, that's very overwhelming. So the intuitive part in me, I get messages to say, and sometimes they're really entertaining. So their crisis is not my crisis. Their crisis is not my crisis. Underarm, I don't want to feel overwhelmed. Top ahead, I don't want to feel overwhelmed anymore. Inside eye, I just want to get my stuff done. Outside eye, I'm tired of this feeling. Okay, we'll stop here. Everybody take a deep breath in. And I want you to check back in with your body. On a scale of 0 to 10, remeasure how you're feeling overwhelmed. 0, you're not overwhelmed at all, and 10, you're totally and completely overwhelmed. Where are you on that scale now? I see some smiling faces. That means relief to me. It's like an EFT glow. If you want to know what the EFT glow is, look at this beautiful lady over here.
I just have to say the color, the lights around you have all changed, energy-wise. So it's beautiful.
Mm-hmm. So can you feel the shift in your body? You're acknowledging the shadow. You're doing the work. That's a small piece of acknowledging the shadow. And when you do that, you feel the relief. The shadow isn't a bad thing. Laurie alluded to that earlier. It's not a bad thing. And we need to be aware of it and call it out and accept it. And then we can release it. And that's what you guys just did. Nice job.
Thank you, Julie. That was amazing. I just have to share the light that I saw as you were tapping and letting go and releasing was absolutely beautiful. So good work on that. So now we'll do our offering, and we'll take questions after, all right? Thank you very much. So before you leave today, we have some little yellow cards that have what to do and acknowledging some activities that you can do to help release the shadow energy. There's some great quotes that we found that are behind us, just acknowledgement of the importance of the shadow energy in our world. And we have a few extra minutes that we can take any questions, if you have any questions for any of us this morning. Oops. Can we get a microphone to you, please? Thank you.
With the tapping, do you always have to say words? I know it's preferred to say words, but sometimes you're just feeling it and I don't know what to say. I'm just like feeling really crappy or whatever. And I did that one time and it did help. And then I started feeling it. I'm like, wow, I guess it does. But is it more important, you know what I mean? You know what I'm saying? To say something, or is it okay to just...
If you are in the moment and you need some relief, just start tapping.
Okay.
Words will come to you. They'll bubble up. You'll tap, you'll get some relief, and then words will bubble up. Then say those. But just tap, because so much of us get hung up on, what do I say? Am I going to say the right thing? Am I going to tap in the right order? Just tap. Just tap. Just start tapping. Just do it. And the words will come. Great question.
I want some help on having such high awareness, and then everybody that's brought into my circle, my energy starts going into their awareness. And how can they not see they're doing that? And then feeling guilty for having that thought of judgment and over-awareness. And then going, what inside me needs work? And it's like the more aware and evolved I get, the harder it is to not be triggered unless I'm completely by myself. So maybe some tips on that.
But that's exactly what we're talking about, because the more you're aware, the more you're triggered. The more you're triggered, the more you need tools. And Laurie's going to add to that.
I would say welcome the triggering.
Uh-huh.
Welcome it. As uncomfortable as it is, that's an indication of where exactly, it's like the universe is pushing the button on you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where you get to do the work. We've got an angel calling in somewhere. It's okay. That's okay.
I just have a simple question. I had thought before that tapping is supposed to be with both hands at the same time.
It's not required.
Oh, okay.
You can tap that way if you'd like, but it's not required.
So only one side of the temple and one side under the
That's
eye.
all you need. But if you prefer both, you can do both.
Okay, thanks.
You can tap with your left hand, your right hand. It doesn't matter. It works. Great question.
You know, I love that question because it just brings to me that we have beliefs about right or wrong. And part of the message is there's not a right or wrong. There just is.
Yeah.
So.
And we get hung up then, not proceeding, right? I don't know what to say. I don't know where to tap. I don't know which hand to use. I don't know if I'm supposed to do both hands. We get hung up and then don't proceed. And that's when I just say, keep tapping. Just start tapping. Because you'll feel relief whether you use one hand or two. You'll feel relief, if you're right in the moment and you're feeling anxiety or overwhelm or whatever it is you're feeling. Just tap, even if you're not saying words, and you'll feel relief. Don't get hung up. Just tap. Just tap.
One more question.
Are the ego and the shadow related?
Just a small question, 2 seconds before we're ending, Pete. I thought that's we're going to be here till midday.
Yes.
We'll come back and do that one.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Thank you. That is a big topic, and thank you. Thank you for that. So with that, we'd like to form our closing circle and send everyone off with some loving energy.
Advanced idea. Beautiful, amazing group. Please close your eyes. Take a big inhale. And as you exhale, drop your awareness into your heart space. Begin to breathe in and out through the heart. And as you inhale, feel that light in the heart space, brightening with every inhalation. Allow that light to illuminate all the shadows in your system as you inhale, with love, with gratitude. Inhaling love for your shadows and for those shadows that are reflected towards you. Inhaling gratitude for this journey and for this morning of community that we've spent together. Beautiful. Thank you so much for coming this morning, everybody. You can open your eyes. Do we do a little dance or no? Yay!